All right.
Oh. Nothing but smiles and giggles with this crew, y'all. Glad you're here. This is Ask an Agent Anything, our 14th episode, where quite literally we talk about anything and everything going on in our business, and we invite you to do so as well. We'd love to see you guys in the chat, in the comments, bringing questions our way, because we just love bringing our brains to all of this. My name's Corianne Wright. I am an investor and an agent, and I'm here with my all-time favorite. You know her, you love her. It's Renee.
You're so cowgirl. Renee in LA. I'm so blessed that my family even named me this. So now I have all these little catchphrases. Who knew? So corny, but people remember it. So that's all that matters, right?
Were you born in LA?
I was not born in LA. Oh, no, we're not going to go on that rabbit hole. I was actually born in Texas, but I only lived there until I was 3. Then a short stint in Pennsylvania, and I really grew up in Washington, D.C. So I like to call it the other entertainment capital of the nation. We've got L.A. and D.C. Yes. Politics and bedfellows. Here we go.
Well, then it just all works out. It was just fate.
It was fate. So I think, I jokingly, you've heard me say this before, Corianne, I pay weather tax. The taxes in California are high. They're some of the highest in the whole country. And I really love good weather. I call it mama bear weather. It's just right. I heat it just right. So not too hot, not too cold. So I pay weather tax to live in California, not just LA, but in California. So anyway, I'm here for the moment. Lord have mercy. Here we are, sister, on a Tuesday. And, you and I talked about what topic that we wanted to talk about. We had something planned, but then, life happens, right? What do we make plans and God laughs? That's the spiritual joke. So God kind of laughed on me yesterday, because yesterday, yes, it was Monday, but I really just was throwing a tantrum. And I didn't want to do it. My internal little dialogue, my little girl didn't want to do it. And what's the it? She didn't want to prospect. She didn't want to follow up. She didn't want to go to work. I mean, it was mama bear weather out here. It was just right. And I tell you, it was calling me. It was beckoning me before it gets hot, here in the summer, right, in LA. And, I said that to you, and we sort of talked about, what do we call it? Show up even when you don't want to. That is the theme. Yep. So I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. In the real estate market, especially, it's changed a lot. In terms of real estate agents, we got the news about the National Association of Realtors and changing everything. Honestly, that shouldn't be anything that is such a big deal, but it's become a big deal because as human beings, we don't really like change, except the only inevitable thing is change. So right. It's like love it or hate it, it's coming, right? And I don't know. Anyway, it's ruffled the feathers of agents all over the place. So there's that. And whenever there's a change and whenever there's a changing market, so that happened a year or so ago with the changing market, but it really means that you've got to go to work. There's no more free rides. There's no more, let me just put the sign in the yard and, get paid type of thing. It's not that. The industry is demanding more of the agent. And so you can get tired. And it's not a complaint. Yeah. It's not a victimization, but you can get tired, and I think you and I, I'll speak a little bit for myself, but I know we have similar stories where we're really up to something. And so it is I don't like to use the word hustle, so I say momentum, but it's in the momentum season. We are definitely in a momentum. And this is what it looks like, because when you're in the trenches, you just sometimes feel like, God, is the needle moving? I haven't gotten paid yet. Whatever the ego is telling you, it's kind of brutal out here. So I look tired because I am tired. Because I went to bed at 10 o'clock and I got up at 1:30 in the morning and I could not go back to sleep. I was just up. I don't know if that deserves a thumbs up. I was just up and I stayed up and I got a lot done and I'm still up and I'm probably going to pay for it at like 4 o'clock. But anyway, I'm babbling. Please save me, Corianne.
No, I mean, what's so important about this is that if you look at all of the greats, I don't care what industry we're talking about. I mean, if you want to be the Michael Jordan industry, you practice even when you don't want to be there. I mean, there's never a break when you want to be the best in your industry. And I think in a lot of ways, we are in a season of hustle. And many of the people who are tuning in here, I know are in seasons of hustles. They're pushing and striving to get to something greater. And I think a lot of the times when we want to see that growth in the tree and it's happening beneath the soil, it's happening in the roots, we get impatient.
Mm-hmm.
We get tired, we get exhausted. We want to see the fruits of our labor, and it's within the roots, it's going deep. And sometimes that work can get really exhausting. And so in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
like you and I both have experienced our internals throwing a little fit about it.
Oh, she was so alive and well. I was a defiant child. Yeah, you weren't going to tell me what to do. And man, she showed up yesterday like, I don't want to. That's what she said. I don't want to. And I did anyway.
Oh,
So here I am.
that's what we're
Oh,
here to talk about too, is the doing it anyway, because it really does come down to making sure that you're putting in the steps and the practice and what we call KPIs.
mhm.
So key performance indicators, making sure that you are hitting that every day so that you can see steps of growth. I think many people that start in this industry, whether you're starting on the investor side or you're starting on the agent side, it's real easy to have 3 days of bursts where being on the phones is easy and somebody tells you to F off and you're like, have a pleasant day. And you just keep rolling. And that's always so easy for a period of time. For me, it's about 3 days, honestly, that I go
Yeah.
on these crazy bursts. By day 4 or 5, if I haven't actually set expectations that have balance, that have harmony in my life over those first few days, then day 4 or 5 is like a total train wreck. And I lose all of that momentum I just had in the previous 3 days. And my goodness, there's my soapbox on the whole thing.
And
I
you
feel
know
like
what's
I'm
funny?
learning
No, go
mm,
ahead. Go ahead. What were you saying? You're learning what?
I just feel like I'm starting to learn how to create that kind of harmony and consistency so I don't burn out. And yeah, I'm curious any thoughts that you have after
I
my
think you just
soapbox
got to
on this.
really, really, to me, it's about grace. So, see, instead of saying, oh, I had this temper tantrum and then made myself wrong about it, it's like I
Mm,
it's like having a conversation with that little part of you without going off too off on topic. There's a school of psychology called internal family systems, or IFS. And
mm,
really what they talk about is like, who's talking? Is that your 8-year old? Is that your 13-year-old? Right? Because it's not really who you are now. It's like, who's talking? So the internal family system is a perfect name for it, because it's your insides. Right. And so in a
mm,
way, it's like being your own loving parent. And if you are a good parent and a caring parent, you're not going to shout at your kids. And so, who was that? Like, who was talking? Who was that person? It was more like my defiant teenager. I wasn't really a little person. I said little person, but like a teenager. And I could hear myself saying that, and I could almost feel myself being that. And instead of, again, making myself wrong, for me, a quick cure is to kind of get quiet and listen. But I also go for a walk. Sometimes you just need to move. So there's a couple things here. For me, I need to move. I think movement in general, I mean, Tony Robbins talks about it. So is that having what do you call it, something that you're jumping up and down on? Those little trampolines, are you having that? Are you going for a walk outside? For me, I live in a building, so I do have access to a little gym, which is nice. So say if it's really warm out, maybe it's noon in August and it's a little too hot for me to go for a walk in the sun, I'll be able to go down there and go do that. So find something for yourself where you can get some movement, even if you just do some jumping jacks. And something else that came to me, which actually has been working really well, it's called the Pomodoro technique. And it's working
mm,
for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. So essentially you're working for 50 minutes, in total in an hour, and then taking a 10-minute break. And you can break it up in either way. But there's a lot of study about the brain that says a concentrated effort for a short amount of time and then taking a break, you can pace yourself. So it's almost like running a marathon. Whatever a marathon is,
mm,
26 point something miles, right? So it's that pacing. And I noticed that yesterday I didn't have as much grace because I paced myself, but then I didn't actually get all the work I wanted to get done, and I didn't actually meet my KPIs. And it felt even more resistant because I wanted to keep my word to myself, right? Like an authenticity of keeping my word to myself. So I pushed and I ended up taking a couple of smaller breaks, but then I was getting more and more resistant to it. So I stopped at 7 o'clock when I probably could have kept going. And instead of my 35 to 39 contacts, which includes follow-ups for me per day, I think it was like 29. So it's not the worst, but I mean, shoot, at 4 o'clock, I was nowhere near there. So I was like, let's get going. And I applied the Pomodoro technique. I took breaks and I just did the thing, So I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And then what I did do, and this is another sort of answer for you, is I do go online. I do go into some Facebook groups and start dialogue there because I want to network. I'm not just chit chatting, and it's actually real estate related. And so I knew that I was like tired and kind of feeling introverted, and my best space was not going to be on the phone per se, right? So I wasn't enlivened. It's like I couldn't find it in myself. I was really having a minute yesterday. And I just went, which I also do because I want to, find other buyers and wholesalers and things like that. So I'm going into these Facebook groups and I'm reaching out, and I didn't technically have to verbally talk to anybody. I could hide, in those comments, and still I did great. I ended up I've got them right here. I'm going to end up calling about 15 people based off that. So anyway, that's a long answer, but I wanted to give people some sort of techniques so you're not just hearing me kind of bitch about I had a bad day. It's like, all right, what do I do, to get myself out of it? God help me with waking up at 1:30 in the morning, so we'll see how today goes, but I'm trudging through. It's all good.
The harmony of both, I feel like there's two different ways that we could walk down, and I honestly want to do both. And one is the parenting of self. And what comes to mind is, and I don't know if you watch enough TV to have seen this commercial, but it's the commercial where somebody's driving and the multiple different versions of themselves sit in the car, and they're all kind of like having a conversation about where they're going. I could not tell you what that commercial is for right now. It's some kind of vehicle, probably a Kia. Okay. But in general, it has that whole, I'm talking to my multiple selves, kind of my multiple different iterations of self. How do you visualize that when you are parenting the teenager that just wants to go outside instead of use the Pomodoro technique to make those calls? Because you were right in line with the KPIs that are reachable even on a bad day.
Well, that first part of, what do I do? I actually envision myself. I think we can all envision what we looked like, who we may have been, the essence of who we were at a younger age. Younger age to me is maybe that tweens and younger, so like a 10, I think a 10, 11 is a tween, and then it goes to teenager. So that and younger. And then definitely I know what I looked like when I was 13, like a total defiant teenager, total little like heavy metal punk rock, if you can imagine that. I'll have to dig up a picture.
I feel like I can't imagine that.
Oh my God, feathered hair. And I think I had an Ozzy Osbourne t-shirt on at one point, and then some other punk shirt on another. Because back in the day, you technically couldn't like both. You couldn't be in both, but I liked both. Plus, I liked Madonna. Who am I right now? Anyway, I remember what I looked like then, and I remember the essence of who I was all the way up to about 20, which is kind of your formative years, really. I think they say something like you're solidified by the time you're about 25. And if you go to change anything, it's going to be really challenging, so it's those give and take years. So I know, right? So I envision what I look like. I embody how I felt at those times. And especially if there's a resistance to it, then I just get quiet. And I get quiet like I am listening to that person, because there's probably something, I'll assert it is like fact, that whatever is coming up for me didn't get handled at that age, and it's coming up now. So it's like newsflash. If you don't handle things as you go along, I believe there's no free rides in life. It'll show up. It'll ruin a marriage. It'll, You'll be a horrible business partner. I mean, it's going to show up in other equities of your life. Sometimes it's not that loud, but if you start to go, what do you want, 13-year-old Corianne? What do you want, 8-year-old Renee? What's in that? And then truly, almost like I'm sitting across from myself, like that analogy in the car, and just listening until she can talk. It's kind of whatever words may come into my mind. Blame. I leave space for blame. Oh, my parents didn't do this. I wasn't provided for there. That's all perceived negativity. But I think there's a healthy version of that needs to be done and addressed, because if you don't, then it's going to perpetuate. So I just listened for what was it that I needed at that time, or what didn't I hear? And what came up for me, but this has come up many times before, is no one's coming. Like, I have to do this all myself. Now, I get it. Like, no one's actually coming, right? No one owes you anything. A husband, a wife, parents. I mean, when you are an adult, they don't owe you anything. And so what can I do? I mean, that's the younger version of me saying that. So then it's like, okay, been heard. Now, what can we do to put things into place to support me? And the interesting part is, I know that, but I also have a financial commitment to make sure that I have a war chest of money so that I can hire people or / train them or whatever. And I'm in that gray area between, I really actually need to do this right now before I just start, bleeding out money. And then I'm running that coffer dry, and it's taking attention away from the momentum. So, this is maybe another, 3 months. I assert, because I have a business coach, another 2 to 3 months of where I'm at the pace I'm at, to get me to where I need to go. So it's the momentum needs to come. And this thing is so goofy. The momentum needs to come. And I just got to stay the course. There's no other way out. The only way out is through, and I'm in it. And so my little girl just doesn't want to. She wants to go out and play. And she wants somebody else to handle it. She wants somebody else to come in here and handle it.
Oh, snaps to that. And honestly, I don't talk about this too much, but I'm NLP certified and hypnotherapy certified. I often have the pleasure of coaching people through taking a deep dive back into what's going on in their brain space. And oftentimes I am talking to one of those versions of themselves. And I've been in a situation before where I was like, how old are you? And I got a 10. And I was talking to and kind of working through what this 10-year-old version of my client was talking about and needing. And I think that's something, you don't need a hypnotherapist to get there. You just need a mirror in a lot of ways to be able to look at yourself in the eyes and go, okay, what is coming up right now? And what version of me is trying to talk? And giving that conversation kind of over to yourself. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did yesterday, is you listened to the teenager first and foremost. And then you said, okay, I understand what you're feeling and thinking, and this is more of the priority so that we can get to even better versions of ourselves. So, hopefully she sat down and was a little quieter.
She was. Yesterday was I was really on one. It's a rare, right? That was a rare occurrence. And it's very interesting to observe yourself. I think on coattails of what you just said is, whatever, if you have the willingness, you must have the willingness to be objective and humble yourself to really being in a space to listen for the uncomfortability. But ultimately, it really is like a parent-child relationship. So it's being there for that child that's in you that maybe didn't get hurt or didn't have a completion. And it all sounds a little corny, but this is really actual just psychology, at play, right? You can go to different psychologists if you wanted to work through therapy, or just different techniques to, like you said, kind of get yourself out of it, but not in a way that, I don't know if it's an America thing, but we really are not very graceful with each other on the whole. The American culture is just work harder and faster. You get rewarded more for working harder and faster, not actually taking a step back and saying, what isn't working here? And where do I need to course correct? And sometimes it's not about positive affirmations. It's just not. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to recognize what's going to work for you. You know, to me, that's a little bit of lipstick on pig. Do I love to read positive affirmations and memes and all the things? Yeah, it's a feel good for a moment. But for me personally, that doesn't really get me going. Mine is like, how are we going to get to the bottom of this? Where's the root cause of this behavior so that I can have some arms around it? And therefore, when it
Yeah.
shows up again, what level of volume is it in? And who do I need to be as my own inner loving parent to guide me through that process? Not just getting off of something, which in a lot of ways is spiritual bypassing. So be with the
Yeah.
uncomfortability, And that's the other thing is, I think I'll speak for myself, but you know, my parents were like once removed from two sets of immigrant parents, immigrants from that era in the early 1900s, 1910s, 20s. They didn't talk about their feelings. Psychology and Freud was basically barely, you know, over the edge of availability.
Yeah.
They just didn't talk about their feelings. They stuffed everything. My parents were older, so they learned from an older set of parents who stuffed all their emotions. And it's like the pendulum has swung a little bit. I think it's a little snowflakey out there. Like somebody's got to pull up their big girl pants and go to work. But you know,
Yeah.
at least talking about what's not working will give you some insight on how to handle yourself the next time this kind of stuff shows up. And you know, I shared a few of the things that work for me.
I think that some of what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's about the action for you. Like you're willing to go back and look at what started or could be starting this chain of action for you, but it's about correcting the action, actually doing something that kind of propels and shifts in the right direction. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, it's having the grace and kindness and caring of self to be able to listen. And I don't want to be a perpetual victim to this incompletion.
Mm,
You know, so if
mm,
it comes up again, I have the wherewithal and the tools to handle myself. It's like a kid when they cry again. Okay, let's use your big words. Let's talk about it. And let's have some kind of a resolve, because it's just taking up a lot of space. And you have to
yeah.
watch, because I've been this, like, ask me how I know, right? You've got to watch, because it's really easy to play that perpetual victim. We get a lot of feedback by being a victim. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You must be
Yeah.
tired. Or, oh my God, you got up at 1:30. Or, oh, you had a bad day yesterday. Like that must stink. I mean, do you see that you get a lot of
Hmm.
feedback from people, you get coddling from other people. So thus that is your hit, and you're never actually
Yeah.
ultimately responsible for yourself. You just keep going through life getting hits. It's an addiction. Oh, I'm sorry. But this is not an addiction that we talk about. You know, we talk about drugs and
No.
alcohol, but this is one that is just rampant. And now, whoops, my headset. And now that you know, you have social media. Oh my God, it's all over the place. You can get and make a video, and you got, you know, however many people, however big your following is. I'm sorry, let me help. Let me send something.
No. I'm so glad we're talking about this because I have personally been doing a meditation recently that's to release the victim. I am
Mm.
aware of times where I utilize that for exactly what you're talking about. Honestly, like stab me in the heart where I'm like, oh, there are times where I need to be able to prop myself up where I might be asking my husband or other people who love me to speak into me to be at that right level so I can get back to it
Hmm.
instead of choosing that for myself and getting out of that mode. So I've personally been putting in the work around that V word that I don't particularly love. And I don't want to be like, ooh, who wants to be one of those? Um, but it is a dopamine kick.
Hmm.
And now that of course I'm working on that internally for myself, so I'm seeing it projected in others around me quite often, where when you're outside of the situation you're like, oh, just put on your big girl panties, and then all of a sudden you're going to be able to see that shift and be able to move the right direction in taking the right action towards what actually is your superpower. um Ooh,
Yeah, it's
it's
like
work
sit
though.
with that. It's awareness, and in awareness is work. And you know, one of my biggest ahas, and I think yesterday was one where I was really defiant on it too, but one of my biggest personal ahas is just personal responsibility. And there is a
Mm,
lot of the reward, if there is one on the other side of that, is your power. So you have your power back to yourself. There's a lot of talk and throwing around of like, don't give away your power. Don't give away your power. Well, we give our own power away. And yet, how do we retain it? And my opinion is that when you are aware, especially when I like to call it on the court, like, boom, it's happening. And then you can get into a space of awareness and kind of write it out as needed. I don't think it all has to happen immediately if you don't have the training for it. You can get off of it immediately, absolutely. But we love to keep playing the victim for things. So sometimes it might take 24 hours, whatever, an hour. And then when you have the grace to move through it, the other side of that is you do have your power back. And ultimately, that's what I'm looking for, is my power back, because it's also my own personal standard and my own personal boundary. So I have to have my own personal standards and my own personal boundaries, as well as I would encourage the audience to really do some soul searching about what your values are. Like, what, not just value yourself, but like actionable values. So I'll share one of mine is clear, concise communication in real time. That's an actual value that I have. And whenever I stop getting off of that and I become human and I do something goofy and I'm not in clear, concise communication, that is my roadmap to swing back into that lane and go, okay, wait a minute. So like yesterday, I was being a brat to myself. And another one of my values is keeping my word. My word actually means something. I'm one of these rare people in the world that my word actually means something. It's a level of authenticity that I want to live in. That's not a brag. It's just that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I didn't do it to its ultimate completion, then what am I going to put into place so that I can support myself and others, right? But I'm talking about me for a minute, that I can support myself so that I don't have a breakdown again. But newsflash, there's breakdowns everywhere, and you're always out of integrity, and there's always inauthenticities. So it's having that back to grace, right? It's having that balance of self, so that when you become a human being and you fall off, you apologize, and then you say to yourself and the other person what you're going to do to put the things in place so that essentially it doesn't happen again.
I want to pull a few things out here, because honestly, like the last minute, you could just take that and put Renee in your pocket and keep it with you forever. And I probably will do that. But there's a few things here that tie back to so many conversations that we have. And one of them is the trust you have in yourself to complete what you said you will do for yourself. And I think in many ways that ties back to where you even set your key performance indicators to start. Is it something that you can hit? Is it something you can trust yourself to show up for? And then state what that is and then do it and adjust if you can't. And then that also circles back to what that prospecting is in the first place, which is showing up to what you said you can and will do. You're calling these people, letting them know that you're interested in properties. Well, if one of them gets back to you with a property, you better move on that. You literally needs to show up with the same energy you did in that original prospecting call. And I think that particular characteristic, that one moral of making sure that your words actually mean something, is an area that I'm trying to adjust and dial and check myself on and look at, because I think it's so important, not only to the relationships, but to what it means to trust yourself that you'll show up to what you say you're going to do.
Well, you just said it, right? Because it kind of all boils back to ourselves. And I don't mean that in a selfish way or a high and mighty way, but if you are not conducting yourself that way in life, then ultimately you leave a wake of uncertainty. And people are not really going to bring this up to you because they're scared to say something. They don't want to hurt your feelings. You might have that one good friend that will eventually say something to you if it's chronic. But I just say, take the bull by the horns and just do it yourself. And this is back to self-awareness. And then not just self-awareness, but putting things, implementing things so that you can set yourself up to be more powerful. That's ultimately what all of this is. And, we love to talk about sort of spirituality here. And I don't even know if this is technically spirituality, but it's about energy. And so energy, this topic of conversation has been around for centuries, but it's come more to the forefront now with social media. And so you can say all the right things, but if you're not being what you say you're going to do, people will pick up on that. And so this is really a course in how are you being with yourself? Thus, you can be that in the world. And if you're not getting the results that you want, then take a hard look. And it's these little things, right? So even though we started out this conversation about, oh, it's all about me, right? And I had an off day yesterday. This is death by 1,000 cuts. Because if I don't choose to course correct that day for me and keep my word and have the authenticity of the day and all that, then, and I really let it go. Okay. It's like, sometimes you just got to go to bed. Okay. I get it. Like, you did nothing that day. There's no KPIs. You feel like crap. You feel like nothing got done. And those are going to be those days. Okay. So that's back to have some grace. But I'm saying on the whole, right? I'm saying on the whole, like, if there's persistent, consistent way of being, that's leaks, that's leakage, that's death by 1,000 cuts. And people are going to see you as that. And it's not I don't care what people think. It's how are you operating in the world? Because it is working smarter and not harder. And, your word anymore, it's kind of like my grandparents' generation, or probably maybe a little bit my parents, but definitely my grandparents, they came from, the Depression. And it's like that generation and prior, your word actually meant something. I mean, I don't know anymore. It's like people ghost you. They say they're going to buy something and then they don't, but they don't give you an explanation. I'm tying it back to real estate a little bit, especially with the investors. Oh, I have a buyer. Oh, I'm going to this. Oh, I'm going to that. And then you can't hear from the people. I mean, it's infuriating. And this is back to ask the agent anything about, and I'm not getting off topic. I just want to tie it in here, but ask the agent anything, and how you and I talk about how the agents don't really prefer the investors, unless they obviously have a relationship with them and all the things, but they prefer not to have a conversation with them. Why? Not because they don't want to do deals with people, but because this behavior is now some kind of bizarrely acceptable behavior, particularly in the investor community. Imagine if you actually kept your word or put things in place that were, hey, we're not going to buy the house, or we can't do the thing. Not, oh, I'm not interested. And then you just don't hear from them. And that's the acceptable answer. And that's how this industry is gone. So now you're in oblivion. You're like, do they want it? Do they not want it? Did they get my email? Did they get my text? So, back to just putting things in implementing in place. And I'm really emphatic about being your word. And when you're not, because it's inevitable that you will not be, either due to lack of time or family situations, or you're sick, or I don't know what, life is going to happen, that as soon as possible, you get yourself back into into communication with the people that you said you were going to be in communication with. And just that alone has a lot of integrity and is based on your word. And you get past it and heal it by saying, and next time I'm going to do this to, assure that this won't happen again. Basically, will you accept my apology? And people are really forgiving. I mean, that alone will kind of a get out of jail free card, but obviously be authentic while you're saying it, or sincere when you're saying it,
Absolutely. I think you've really summed it up so perfectly, where there has to be the balance between the grace and pushing yourself into performance in a lot of ways. And you have to be kind of the judge of where that stands. In a lot of ways, though, what you have to make sure of is that you are coming back in and you're following through and you're following up after you've taken those dips. Because we're all going to experience the ups and downs. We just want to see those in a forward progression. We don't want those ups and downs to be in one spot, creating just energy right here. We're trying to push that in the right direction. And that's in your leads and in your prospecting. And honestly, Renee, you're inspiring to me on those days where I don't feel like it. I go, oh, I have other friends who show up when they don't feel like it. And that's a huge part of what Ask an Agent Anything is where we are supporting each other and we're inviting other people in to ask questions, pick our brains, and be a part of this support team that is that unicorn agent. We understand both worlds. We understand the license side of things and taking care of the traditional client. We also understand the investor. And because of that, we know that having those two things aligned moves us forward faster. And I'm just very grateful to have your partnership in that.
Thank you. I am too.
Mission.
Yeah, this is a lonely business a lot of the time. And even when people have teams or are on teams, or, it's very popular these days to have remote or virtual employees, not employees, team members, employees, whatever the semantic is, right? People on the team. And it can be, it's interesting. It can be a little disempowering, a little bit. Depends on who the team lead is and how it's going, and how self-motivated the people that you've chosen to be on your team are. Sometimes it sounds better than it is. Real estate is a very alluring business. We've got a lot of these TV shows now. It looks like it's fast, quick money. And what they're not talking about is really stuff like this. It's not sexy. It doesn't necessarily sell. Probably social media is the place for it to live instead of television, because it's not really sensational. It's like, hey, this is my day. This is the truth of it all. That I don't want to do this. Nobody wants to. That's not entertaining. Nobody necessarily wants to tune in, on Bravo and hear somebody bitching about something. I don't know. Maybe there's a snippet of it, but for the love of God, there's somebody at my door. This is live. Here we go.
It is. Yeah. I can handle it. I can hang with the fam if you've got to go to the
hang
door.
with the fam for 1 second.
Absolutely. To anybody that is here and listening, thank you so much for joining, for being a part of the experiment that is Renee and I on a podcast together. In a lot of ways, this is experimental. It is trying to download our brain and bring to our community some value, and we need your participation in it. In fact, we're going to be opening up the back scenes and bringing you guys on live with us to be asking questions on Ask an Agent Anything. And we really want to start that as soon as possible, which means I need to know you guys are here and in the comments and wanting to participate and bring us those questions. I absolutely would love to see you guys there so I can give you a shout out. And it looks like we have Renee back. So let's pull her back
I'm
up.
back. Oh, you got to love the lives. It's all good. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everybody. It is what it is. It could be a barking dog. It could be a doorbell. You never know what's going to happen over here.
It could be the greatest gift ever. You never know.
I know. That's right. What'd you get out of all that? How are you going to implement something different? How are you, from what I said, what might work for you?
Well, I'm in myself. One of the pitfalls that I jump off of all the time is I allow my progress to be halted by perfection. And it comes down to, if I don't think I can hit those 35 calls that I need to make today, I might not even start at all. Because if I'm not going to hit it, then who the heck cares? I'll focus on something else. Or, hey, I'm not going to share my new PDF because I don't feel like the colors and the alignment is just right, even if it might garner me a new client I get to work with. And I think those little notes of perfectionism, they come from one of the variations of Corianne. And honestly, I could probably pick somewhere in the 10 to 12 range that really wanted validation upon approval of my work, meaning I felt like I needed to have it perfect. And so I'm personally just kind of live in front of you all calling myself out to the table and going, oh, I do this all the time if I don't feel like I'm bringing an A++ game. And I prefer the version of Corianne that shows up even when it's not perfect, even when it's gritty, even when it's ugly, even like today when I didn't make a post about this podcast, don't have my earrings in, girl got no lashes, she's here. And I like that version of myself. And so I think I want to see and be embodiment of that person who's willing to show up in the imperfections and really show up to the word of the person that I can be for my community and for my people, even on the days where it's just, man, sometimes I don't feel it.
And that's what it is to be human. In fact, if you look at it as contrast, for me, or I'm speaking for myself, so hopefully somebody will take it or leave it, whatever the case may be. But I look at it as contrast. And so if I put it in perspective for myself, because it's all about perception, right? So if I put it in perspective for myself, that that's like my little young self, or that's my ego, or what have you, that it's not so bad. Because really, it's just a thought. We're just having an emotion and we're having a thought attached to that emotion, and it's waning and it will go. But for whatever reason, we all, human beings, we act like it's a Greek tragedy. It's like the worst thing that happened, and it just starts to
Yeah.
spiral and we get into a shame spiral, which is a real thing. And if you look at Power versus Force, Dr. Hawkins' book, shame is one of the lowest vibrations. He has a chart of vibrations, and you guys can look it up, Dr. Hawkins' chart. And courage, I think, vibrates at like a 200. He put a numerical thing to it. So once you're at courage and you start to like creep above that, you can get yourself out of it pretty quickly. But if you stay in a shame spiral and it just goes downward, it's horrible. And it's really a propellant. So you got to wonder, if you're in that and then you're still trying to go on for your day in that space, how can you change your space? Again, kind of back to Tony Robbins, we all know who he is, right? He's always about, changing your space. He does tapping, like a tap. He does jumping. I went to one of the events one time. I appreciate so much who he is. He definitely speaks to the masses. I kind of took what I want and left the rest. I'm not a huge Tony Robbins proponent, but one of the things that I've taken away from him is movement, like move yourself out of where you are to change up your way of being in that moment. And you'd be surprised. You can come back pretty quickly from where you've been, but also don't step over. If you need to move quickly and you do like 10 jumping jacks kind of thing, because you are just in that place in your day and you don't have time to psychoanalyze yourself. But I would encourage you to also come back, to that space to make sure that you have a place of completion. So for you, when you were saying, the perfection, that's a real thing for people, trying to get it right. And it's a procrastination, and it's probably a trauma response to something. If you go way back, you didn't do something in the right way that somebody expected you to do it, and you made that mean something. And that's been with you ever since then. Because the truth is, perfection doesn't even exist. I mean, we use it as a form of expression, like, oh, that's perfect, or, like that, but it doesn't even exist. It doesn't even exist in nature. Things are constantly changing. So it really is like doing yourself a disservice to try to function from a place of perfectionism when it's really an illusion. It literally doesn't exist. It's just a word. So,
and maybe you can help me remember which book it is that really dives into how these things can get trapped. Is it The Untethered Soul, or is it Becoming Superhuman? Have you heard of either one of those books?
It might be Becoming Superhuman. Untethered Soul is more about, he goes way deep, it's all very spiritual. In short, it's about getting quiet, doing meditation, and then the answers coming to you, because the answers are within you. So instead of grasping and grappling outwardly for everything, it's actually calming your mind by getting quiet. And it's very confronting. I did a 10-day silent retreat. I did a Vipassana silent retreat a couple of years ago, and it's for 10 days. You don't talk to anyone. You can. There are leadership there that if you're having a real problem, you can. And oh, by the way, it's like for 5 minutes. So if you're having a mental breakdown, it's kind of like good luck to you. Sitting with yourself for 10 days, not making eye contact with anyone, not chit-chatting, not nothing, no phone, no nothing, will actually indicate how loud that internal voice is. And you will realize how ridiculous some of these small voices really are. So anyway, I'm a proponent of doing the Vipassana retreat. It is for everyone, and it's not for everyone. It is, it can be very confronting. I mean, I sat in a meditation for, about 8 hours and kicked and screamed when I went through my divorce. Here's some more realism. But I basically got through a lot of my anger, and I was able to move through it in about 3 days, because I sat there for 8 hours a day, kicking and screaming in my head. And then I realized, my part in it, I probably was a year's worth of therapy in 3 days. So yeah, getting quiet is important. Anyway, we got off.
To be quiet. We did, but I do want to give our audience some things to jump off to after this conversation. And one of them is The Untethered Soul, for exactly what Renee just said. The other one is Becoming Superhuman, which was the first time I was ever introduced to the more biological aspects of the chakras. and what those mean and how they're actually energy centers and how they can entrap feelings and thoughts. And I'm being reintroduced, honestly, back into that world as I'm learning the things that are trapped still within me. You know, you read one of those books, you take off and you're like, oh, I've got that knowledge now. It's definitely
Yeah.
implemented. But really, it's a continuous practice of revisiting and reparenting many different aspects of myself so that I can level up each time.
Oh my gosh.
And that, you know, that's personal, that's business, that's everything. And that's, again, why we call this thing Ask an Agent Anything, because we
Yeah.
really do break it all down, and in the most honest, authentic way. Like, it's been a tough beginning to the week, but we
Yeah.
still showed up and we've experimented with how to do it. We highly suggest that you continue to show up even when you don't want to be there too. Um, and I think those are the things that I'm going to be implementing, is just a recheck on my KPIs. And then the
Mhm.
other thing that I've been interested in and doing more of, and I wouldn't say I have these completely solidified, but I have an idea of what they should be, is some life KPIs, which
Mm.
are, you know, oh, I've walked my dog 2-3 times this week. I've made sure that I've taken care of myself in this way or this way, and just kind of aligning those things. So when you do get stuck in your head in that way, you can go, oh, what's on my life KPI list? Oh, I need a walk. Let's go take a walk. We get to cross this off. We get that dopamine hit. And then when we return to our desk, hopefully we've cleared a lot of those things that are already going on, because movement, just like you said, is so important to all of
That's
it.
so brilliant. And then they become a habit, right? So it might, an audience member might think like, oh gosh, another KPI, another thing to track. Well, what gets tracked gets not only done, but also can get course corrected. And along with that, which those little adages don't talk about, is it can and will, as long as you stick with it. I think it's about a minimum of 28 days to about 40 days to actually create a new habit.
Mm.
So why is when people go into recovery, right? Like let's say for alcoholism or drugs, it's always 28 days or longer, but it's a
Yeah.
minimum of 28 days. So the brain starts to actually retrack things when you're given new habits, in short.
Yeah.
And so give yourself that grace for doing 28 days of anything. And then if you're working, give it 28 days, which is going to be at least over a month, because you're not working every day in a month. That's not healthy. So an average is probably 18 to 20 days. So, kind of do the math, give yourself the grace. And then of course there's the KPI of 90 days. And 90 days is not, 90 days in the business world obviously is 3 months, because they want to break up the year and have it
Yeah.
look like that. But the truth is it's not 90 working days. So for those of you who are in a cycle, in my opinion, as far as KPIs are concerned, it's really like 2 6-month timeframes. So I don't want to get it too
Mm.
twisted, but if you start counting and you work 18 to 20 days a month, then that is like 5 months right there. So let's
Yeah.
call it 10 months. Okay. And then the other 2 months are the days you really took off. So realistically, you're only actually working, I think, anywhere between 8 to maybe 10 months of the year. That's not a lot of time. So back to tracking it, back to your mindset. You don't have time to jerk around, or otherwise you're going to wake up and be like, oh my God, I'm doing year 1 again, or why I'm at the end of this year and I actually didn't meet my realistic standards. You're going to hear, oh, make 50 calls a day, make 50 calls a day. Maybe you can do that and should do that in the beginning for the first quarter, but then pull back, because your conversations are going to be longer when you're doing the follow-up. It's going to take a bit more time to write the offers and so forth. So maybe you pull back and do, okay, I'm doing 35 or 39 contacts a day. And then you got to look and give yourself at least a year in the business, because you really look, you're going to do business, you're going to make money. I got it. But the momentum is barely getting started in the first 6 months. And then the second 6 months is going to go. And now you only have 1 year of data. You really need, a number of years of data to then come cry on my shoulder. In the meantime, figure out why you're crying about stuff doesn't work, because I guarantee that's an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old who didn't get what they wanted and you didn't complete on it, because none of us have the right to actually complain. As much as I didn't have a good day, I got it, I'm pissy yesterday, but I don't have the right to. I haven't earned the right to. So you see what I'm saying? Like, I have to parent myself. I don't earn the right to actually stay in that. I can say all I want, but I'm barely in my second quarter of what I'm doing here. I'm just tired of it and I don't want to do it anymore. That's my little girl, but I haven't earned the right to actually have any data that says otherwise. So fine, go pound sand and do it anyway, or go for a walk and do it anyway.
And for anybody out there that's visual like me and number KPI side of things, I just want to remind you, the first time you do that thing, it creates the synapses in your brain. But the other one is stronger and your brain's not dumb. It's going to go, that bridge looks like it's been run over, like it can take on anything. Why? Because you've chosen the ice cream over and over and over and over again. And the first time you choose the apple, great, good job. But the second time you choose the apple, that bridge gets stronger and you've got to build it up so it's a better choice than the ice cream. And honestly, it's not easy. And every time you choose the other pathway, you're only strengthening it more. And I think in a lot of ways, that's where the struggle of, okay, I'm not 25 anymore. I wish I was, but I'm not 25 anymore. I have a lot of things that are locked in on my characteristics and my personality that I would still like to see improve. and I think I have to recognize it is a little bit harder to strengthen the bridge of the girl that works out every morning instead of the girl that's just like, you know what, the office is so busy, I really need to be there at 7 a.m. You know, those kinds of things. I am being very much a character here because I want you guys to know that you are not alone in this experience. And it really is about having a community and people to back you up, to go, are you becoming that person that you envisioned? Because I can see it too. I can see who that person is. And Renee, I can see the person that you are aiming towards, and it is one hell of a badass. So like, it's gonna, of course, have a few different times where the riptide rush tries to hit you back and go, no, get back into your place. You know, it's easier there. The bridge is stronger in the ease that's behind you. But keep pressing forward, because man, that vision is a big one.
Guys, it's no joke. Sometimes I want to quit every day. I mean, what am I going to do really? But you know, it comes, that thought comes like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've been doing this a long time, almost 19 years now. I've been doing this a long time. So my ego is in a different position. My ego is like, I shouldn't be doing this. Somebody else should be doing, you know, it's like all that is there for me. So it's real. And you just say it, you ring up your one friend, right? And or you go for a walk, you say it to the air and you just keep moving. And until something becomes where, here's the difference. You know, you're being bratty if you still actually want to keep going. Whereas I've had other opportunities in my life where I wasn't doing real estate, other careers, other things, other entrepreneurial ventures. And I just had this beautiful, warm hit that was like, I'm done. And I completed it. And that's very different than leaving out of a reaction or leaving because you don't want to do something. So if you get those emotions, really do check yourself, do all the things that Corianne and I talked about here, go for the walk, jump up and down, whatever you need to do to change your state. And if some time goes by, and you'll only know what that is, there's no timeline, but I venture to say, a decent amount of time, a month, 2 months, maybe even 6 months. A year is maybe a long time, but we're all different. And then at that moment, when you're like, you know what, this is for the birds. Either my health something's going on with my health. My heart's just not in it. I really feel like this is just trudging. I'm not getting the outcomes that I want. Maybe then you do leave gracefully, but really go out with a college try on that. And then there are the other times like what I got where I felt like I just ran my course with it. I really enjoyed everything that I did. And I basically, unbeknownst to me, kind of left at the top of what I did. And people were running in my direction. Like, what do you mean you're leaving? Because they were projecting onto me what they would have done or not done. And you have to stay steady with your compass and go and not get into doubt and be like, I'm complete. Complete is almost different from being done. It's semantics, but complete is like, I've done something, I've run its course, and I'm done. I'm done with this. And it's a calm. You'll feel it. It's a calm. So guys, don't get too crazy when it's just your little internal family system that is being bratty versus, are you actually done with something? Have you actually done? Are you done? So it's very personal.
Many times I see that happening. It's an adjustment to a strength within something else. And so
Mm,
I call out to our audience that might be feeling that way, like, no, maybe it is time to quit one thing and pour my energy into another, is to ask yourself, where do you find the most joy and energy
mhm.
from what you're already doing? Pivot more into that direction and dive in there, because in a lot of ways this ties back to our conversation last week about what Cody Sanchez said. And
Mm,
she was like, in any business that you're looking at, you have to have a value proposition as to what you're good at, what you bring, and then you take that into real estate, then you take that into other business trees, and you present that to grow equity into your pocket. And so in a
yeah.
lot of ways, that's exactly what you can do here in real estate. There's so many different aspects and ways to pivot even here, but that's what I see you doing. You seeing your strength in the investment side of things and in the virtual conversations that you have, and pivoting in that direction.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. That's the other thing. That's why we do need each other. We are programmed that way, and find your people and ask the uncomfortable questions like, how do you see me right now? And, maybe give them some parameters, give me the bad news first, leave me on a high note. And we don't know, this again, real estate's kind of a lonely business, and you don't get a lot of initial feedback. You come together for these deals and, almost never see those people again. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of an odd way to operate, with your fellow human beings. So if you're not used to that, you've got to ask for what you want. And
Mm-hmm.
just assert yourself. And people care, and people want to see people win, especially in the collaborative capacity. And I thank God that that's where the most of the world is going, or how I can see how real estate is going, because that's not the world I grew up in. It was very
Mm.
competitive, and it was shoved down our throats to be competitive. So this change in dialogue is really refreshing. And yeah, that's when you find your people.
I'm glad you said that, because you and I found each other within a group of our people.
Yeah.
And honestly, that community is one of my favorite communities to pour into and be a part of. And that's the Astro Flipping community. And if any of our audience members wants to be introduced to and come into that family, I highly suggest you reach out to Renee or myself so that we can introduce you to the right people and get you in the doors of Astro Flipping. We would
Yeah.
absolutely love to be the steward in that relationship, and all you've got to do is DM either one of us. Um, and we'd absolutely love that. And honestly, with that for today, I think we're going to wrap just a few minutes early. We brought a
Yeah.
lot, family. So I would really, really love to see some comments in either one of our YouTubes or Facebooks that tells us if you took anything away from this. Was there anything
Yeah.
that you heard that you're implementing, anything that you were excited about hearing? Really, the feedback would mean the world to us. And of course, we care that we're adding value in your world, and that you're being propped up and feeling charged up to go out into the world and continue to see that big vision of you in the
Yeah.
future happen.
So good. Yeah, you'll see that in our show notes. Reach out to either of us, whoever you resonate with. We'll be happy to get you in communication. And thank you guys for tuning in. This is a little bit different, maybe a little softer subject. Definitely, we have some guests coming up. We will be talking shop. We will be talking more real estate. So it's not all the touchy feelies, but mindset matters, and this is the basis of it all. We can give you all the secrets and the tools and the tips and the tricks, but if this isn't right, like we talked today, it's all for nothing. You're kind of spinning your wheels. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for listening. We appreciate your comments.
We'll see you next week on Tuesday at 2 Mountain Standard Time for Ask an Agent Anything. And we hope to see you there so we can pull you backstage and hear what burning questions you have. I can't wait,
Sounds
y'all.
good.
Have a great rest of your
Be
week.
well. Bye.